My name is Hannah Cole. I'm 26 years old. And the day that was supposed to be the happiest day of my entire life turned into the moment I finally understood the hardest, most painful lesson my father had been trying to teach me since I was a little girl. Respect is not something you beg for. It is not something you slowly earn by smiling through the insults, by shrinking yourself smaller and smaller until you disappear into someone else's perfect, polished world. Respect is a line drawn in stone. And the second someone crosses it, especially when it comes to the people who sacrificed everything for you, you don't negotiate, you don't make excuses, and you don't look back. You walk away. I didn't learn that lesson standing at the altar with tears in my eyes. I didn't learn it when I quietly slipped the diamond ring off my finger later that evening and placed it on the table like it was nothing more than a piece of expensive glass. I learned it standing outside the towering wrought iron gates of the prestigious Lakeside Country Club, still dressed in my white silk wedding robe, the faint scent of hairspray and nervous sweat clinging to me, while my parents, the two people who had given me everything, were being treated like they didn't belong at their own daughter's wedding. They weren't arguing, they weren't causing a scene. That's what shattered me the most. My mother, Elena Cole, stood there silently, both hands clutching her simple purse so tightly that her knuckles had turned white. She wore the soft lavender dress she had spent 2 full weekends altering by hand in our tiny living room late at night. After finishing her long days at school, she had added delicate lace to the sleeves herself because she wanted to look elegant and beautiful for me, her only daughter. The dress wasn't designer, it wasn't expensive, but every single stitch was sewn with pure love. Love that came from years of quiet sacrifice. From choosing to buy me new school shoes instead of a new dress for herself, from skipping her own comforts so I could have opportunities she never did. My father, Marcus Cole, stood right beside her in the dark gray suit he had saved for months to buy from the department store downtown. It was the only truly nice suit he had ever owned in his life. He kept nervously adjusting the sleeve, trying to make it sit perfectly on his broad shoulders, trying desperately to look dignified and strong, even as the security guard blocked their path with folded arms. When the guard, a tall, stone-faced man in a crisp black suit, told them coldly, "I'm sorry, but I have strict instructions from Mrs. Whitaker. Only pre-approved guests can enter at this time. You'll have to wait outside until someone from the family confirms." My father simply nodded, his voice calm but carrying the deep tiredness of a man who had worked 12-hour shifts under cars his whole life. "That's all right, son. We'll wait." As if waiting outside the iron gates like outsiders while his only child got married inside was something normal, something acceptable, something a father who had given his entire life for his family should ever have to do on such a day. In that single heartbreaking moment, everything inside me went completely still, not exploding with loud anger, not breaking into chaotic tears, just crystal clear, ice-cold, razor-sharp clarity that cut through every excuse I had been making for the past 2 years. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a last-minute mix-up or poor communication. This was the final, deliberate result of months, years, really, of quiet, polite, invisible little cuts. The kind of slow erosion that happens so gradually you convince yourself each cut doesn't hurt, until one day you look down and realize you're bleeding from 1,000 tiny wounds. I didn't grow up behind gates like these. I grew up in a modest 3-bedroom house on the outskirts of Rockford, Illinois, the kind of place where the screen door slammed loudly every time someone walked in or out, where the wooden floors creaked with every step, and where the kitchen always smelled like my mom's famous meatloaf, bubbling on the old stove, or fresh coffee brewing early in the morning before the sun came up. Money was always tight in our home. We never took fancy vacations to exotic places. We drove the same old, reliable pickup truck for over 15 years, patching it up whenever it needed repairs. But love in that house was loud, warm, steady, and real, the kind of love that didn't need expensive words or grand gestures to prove itself. My father has been a mechanic at the same small, family-owned auto repair shop for 28 long, hard-working years. Every single evening, he came home with grease permanently etched under his fingernails, dark oil stains on his clothes that no amount of washing could fully remove, and a back that ached, constantly from crawling under cars in freezing cold garages during winter or sweltering hot summers. His hands were rough, scarred from years of tools and sharp metal, yet incredibly strong. Hands that fixed broken engines so other families could keep moving forward to their jobs and their dreams. Hands that fixed our leaky roof at midnight during thunderstorms. Hands that never once hesitated to pull me into a tight hug when I came home crying from school or a bad day. But no matter how exhausted or sore he was, he never brought that tiredness or frustration to the dinner table. He would sit across from me with grease still visible on his knuckles, listen patiently to every silly school story I told, every teenage drama about friends or boys, every big or small dream I had for my future, and somehow make me feel like I was the most important person in the entire world. He taught me how to change a flat tire when I was 12, how to check oil levels, and most importantly, how to carry myself with quiet dignity, no matter what life threw at me. My mother worked part-time as a teacher's aide at the local elementary school for as long as I can remember. She didn't just help kids with math problems or reading lessons. Her real, beautiful gift was noticing everything. She noticed when I was too quiet for too long after a tough day. She noticed when my eyes looked heavy with unspoken pain or worry. She noticed when something was weighing on my heart before I even had the words to explain it. She was the one who stayed up late into the night sewing my prom dress by hand on our old sewing machine because we couldn't afford to buy a fancy new one from the mall. She was the one who made sure every child in her class who came to school hungry or without a warm coat got an extra snack or help, even if it meant she quietly went without her own lunch or comfort that day. We never had luxury or status in our lives, but we had something far more priceless that money could never buy. Real, honest, unconditional respect. The kind that lives quietly in how you treat people when no one else is watching. The kind my father showed every single day when he fixed a struggling neighbor's car for free because they couldn't afford the repair bill and had kids to feed. The kind my mother showed when she packed extra lunches secretly for the children who had nothing at home, never seeking thanks or recognition. My father used to tell me, sitting at that old kitchen table with his tired eyes full of wisdom, his voice low and serious, "Hannah, if someone ever tries to make you feel small, it's because they need you to believe you are small. Don't ever give them that power, baby girl. Never shrink yourself for anyone. Stand tall in who you are and where you come from." At the time, when I was younger, it sounded like simple, comforting fatherly advice. Something you nod at and tuck away without fully understanding, but standing there at cold, imposing country club gates on my wedding morning, watching my strong, proud, hard-working father quietly adjust his sleeve while being told to wait outside like he was nobody. That lesson burned itself deep into my soul forever. It woke something up inside me that I could never put back to sleep. I met Daniel Whitaker at a fancy corporate charity gala in downtown Chicago 2.5 years ago. I never belonged in that glittering high society world of crystal champagne glasses, designer gowns that cost more than my parents' annual income, and conversations filled with name-dropping and networking. My best friend Lily had practically dragged me there against my will, insisting I needed to stop hiding in my safe, comfortable little bubble and expand my horizons. Daniel stood out to me immediately in that crowded room, tall, impeccably dressed in a tailored suit with that quiet, effortless confidence that comes from growing up, never having to wonder whether you belonged in any room you entered. He was the golden only son of Whitaker Investments, one of the oldest, most powerful, and wealthiest families in the entire state, with their name on buildings, foundations, and exclusive country club memberships that went back generations. When he first approached and spoke to me that night, everything felt strangely, dangerously easy. His smile was warm and charming. His laugh felt genuine. The loud noise and superficial chatter of the crowded ballroom seemed to fade into the background. For the first time in a very long time, I felt truly seen. Not as the girl from the modest house in Rockford, but as someone interesting and worth talking to. We started dating soon after. It moved fast and felt exciting in the beginning. We went on beautiful dates, dinners at upscale restaurants I had only read about, weekend trips to the lake, thoughtful gifts that showed he was paying attention. For months, it felt like a fairy tale I didn't deserve. Then came the day I finally met his family at their sprawling lakefront mansion. That first dinner felt like stepping into an entirely different universe. Marble floors that shone like mirrors, chandeliers that probably cost more than my parents' entire house, silent staff moving in the background like shadows. His mother, Elaine Whitaker, greeted me with a smile so perfectly practiced and polished that it felt like a carefully crafted mask. She didn't insult me with outright rude words. She was far too sophisticated and calculated for open confrontation. Instead, she delivered small, elegant little daggers, wrapped in velvet politeness that stung more because they were so subtle. "What a simple and charming dress. How refreshingly different from what we usually see. Your background must be so wonderfully grounded and real compared to ours. How interesting that must be. We'll certainly have to work on a few little refinements together before the big day, won't we?" "Dear, just to help you feel more comfortable in these circles." Daniel would sometimes lightly intervene with a quick "Mom, stop," or a gentle laugh. But as the months passed and serious wedding planning began in earnest, even he slowly stopped pushing back. He started defending the comments with lines that slowly chipped away at my confidence. "She's just particular, Hannah. She means well." Or the one that hurt the most, "Let her have this one. After the wedding, it'll be just us, our own life, our own rules, away from all this." The subtle comments and suggestions grew sharper, more frequent, and more pointed as the wedding date got closer. When I suggested that my parents could help with some of the smaller, personal details, perhaps choosing flowers from a local shop we loved or helping with setup in a meaningful way, Elaine smiled sweetly and said, "That's so thoughtful of you, Hannah, but we have top professionals for that sort of thing. We wouldn't want your parents to feel out of place or overwhelmed by the scale of it all." When my mom excitedly called one evening and offered to bake her famous homemade lemon cake, the one she had perfected over years and that everyone in our neighborhood begged for the dessert table as her personal, heartfelt gift to us, Elaine replied with that same perfectly polished smile over the phone. "Oh, how very sweet and quaint, Elena. But we've already hired the award-winning pastry chef from the best restaurant in downtown Chicago. But thank you so much for the adorable thought. It's the effort that counts, isn't it?" I kept making excuses in my own mind to protect the relationship. I told myself it was just normal class and cultural differences. I told myself that Daniel truly loved me and that love would eventually smooth everything over. Daniel kept promising me in quiet moments, holding my hands and looking into my eyes. "After the wedding, everything will calm down. The pressure will be gone. It'll finally be just us building our future together." I wanted so desperately, so painfully to believe him that I ignored the heavy, twisting knot that grew tighter and tighter in my stomach with every passing week. I pushed down the quiet voice inside me that whispered I was losing pieces of myself, and pieces of my family were in the process. 2 weeks before the wedding, during one of the final planning calls, Elaine casually mentioned that she had adjusted the guest arrival protocol and some of the seating arrangements to make sure everything runs smoothly, looks elegant, and stays on schedule for such an important day. When I asked Daniel privately what exactly those adjustments meant for my side of the family, he just shrugged it off casually. "It's just standard country club rules and expectations, babe. Certain standards for how things are handled in these events. Don't overthink it or stress yourself out. It's nothing important. Focus on being a beautiful bride." I told myself again that it was nothing. I was wrong. But on the morning of June 7th, the day that was supposed to be my perfect wedding day, everything became brutally, painfully, and irreversibly real. I was sitting in the luxurious bridal suite at the country club, my makeup half done by the professional artist Elaine had hired, my heart fluttering with a mix of nervous excitement and lingering unease. When my best friend Lily burst through the door without knocking, her face was pale, her eyes wide with shock and anger. "Hannah, your parents are stuck outside the main gate. The security guard won't let them in. He says they need special approval from the Whitaker family. Elaine gave very strict, specific instructions this morning." My stomach dropped like a heavy stone falling into deep water. The room seemed to spin for a second. Without thinking, without even grabbing shoes, I ran, still wearing only my white silk wedding robe, my veil half-pinned haphazardly in my carefully styled hair. Barefoot on the sharp gravel driveway that bit into my feet, I sprinted toward the front gates as fast as I could. And there they were, my mom and dad, standing quietly on the wrong side of those massive, ornate iron gates like visitors who had accidentally shown up at the wrong address on the wrong day. The security guards, as broad-shouldered, expressionless, and clearly following orders, kept repeating the same cold, scripted words. "I'm sorry, ma'am. Strict instructions from Mrs. Whitaker. Only approved guests at this time. I can't let anyone through without confirmation." I felt a wave of hot, protective fury rise in my chest like fire. I marched straight up to the gate, my robe fluttering wildly in the morning breeze, and said in a voice that surprisingly didn't shake at all, "Open this gate right now. These are my parents. They belong here more than anyone else today." Elaine appeared just a minute later, gliding toward us with graceful, measured steps in her expensive pale blue mother of the groom dress, her signature string of pearls gleaming coldly under the bright morning sunlight. She looked every inch the perfect, untouchable society hostess, calm, composed, and completely in control of the situation. "Hannah, darling," she said softly, her voice dripping with false concern and sweetness. "There's been a small misunderstanding with the timing. We're simply managing the flow of guests carefully so the ceremony stays elegant, on schedule, and picture perfect. Your parents can wait just a few short minutes until the right moment. It's nothing personal, I assure you." I looked her straight in the eyes, my gaze steady and unflinching. My voice came out quiet but steel hard, every single word measured, clear and final. "No, Elaine, this is not a misunderstanding. This is a deliberate, calculated decision. You made it. And right here, right now, I am making mine." I turned sharply to the guard, locking eyes with him without blinking. "If you do not open this gate in the next 30 seconds, I will turn around immediately, walk back inside, and cancel this entire wedding. Call the manager, call security, call whoever you need to, but this ends right now." The tension hanging in the air was so thick it felt suffocating. After what seemed like an eternity of heavy silence, the gate finally buzzed open with a loud, heavy, metallic click that echoed in my ears. My parents walked through the gate slowly, almost hesitantly, as if they were still afraid they might not truly belong even now. My mother's eyes were shining with unshed tears of embarrassment and hurt. She whispered brokenly to me, her voice cracking, "I'm so sorry, sweetheart. We didn't want to cause any trouble or embarrassment on your special day." My father just reached out silently and squeezed my hand once, his rough, calloused, mechanic's palm warm, steady, and familiar against mine. It was the same strong hand that had fixed so many broken things throughout my life, including my heart on bad days. I pulled both of them into a tight, fierce hug right there in front of the gates and said, my voice thick with emotion and determination, "You have nothing, absolutely nothing, to apologize for. This is not your fault. None of it is." Inside the grand ballroom, on the surface, everything still looked absolutely flawless and breathtaking. Massive crystal chandeliers sparkled like captured stars overhead. Hundreds of fresh white roses filled every corner with their sweet, heavy scent. Gold-rimmed place settings gleamed elegantly on every round table. 200 well-dressed guests in their finest designer clothes and jewelry chatted and laughed softly, completely unaware of the emotional storm that had just raged outside the gates. But I couldn't unsee what had happened. I couldn't pretend anymore. The illusion had shattered completely. I found Daniel in the groom's suite. He was standing calmly in front of a full-length mirror, adjusting his tie with practiced ease, looking annoyingly composed and handsome, as if nothing in the world was wrong. When I asked him directly, my voice trembling now with barely contained pain and betrayal, "Did you know your mother was planning to humiliate my parents like this at the gate this morning?" The long, heavy, uncomfortable pause before he finally answered told me everything I needed to know. "Hannah," he said with a deep sigh, as if I was being unreasonable and difficult on purpose, "it's just protocol and standard procedure. Mom was only trying to keep things organized, elegant, and running smoothly for everyone. You're seriously overreacting right now. It's our wedding day. Please don't ruin it over something so small and trivial." That single word, overreacting, landed like a hard slap across my face. It was the final nail hammered into the coffin of every illusion, every excuse, every hope I had been desperately clinging to for so long. The ceremony still went ahead because 200 guests were already seated and waiting, and I was still in too much shock to know how to stop everything in that moment. I walked down the long, flower-lined aisle like a ghost trapped in a beautiful white gown, forcing a mechanical smile because everyone was watching. But when I stood beside Daniel at the altar and listened to the officiant speak warmly about love, unity, partnership, mutual respect, and building a life together, all I could vividly picture in my mind was my father standing quietly outside those cold iron gates, adjusting his sleeve with tired dignity and saying, "That's all right, son. We'll wait." The reception was where the mask I had been wearing for months finally shattered completely and publicly. After the traditional first dance, when the MC handed me the microphone for what everyone expected to be a short, sweet, emotional thank you speech to our guests, I didn't deliver the polite, carefully scripted words we had prepared weeks earlier. Instead, I stood tall on the stage, looked out across the now silent ballroom filled with 200 expectant faces, straight at Elaine, sitting proudly at the head table with her perfect Victorious Society smile, and at Daniel watching me with that familiar, condescending, be reasonable Hannah expression he always wore when he wanted me to stay quiet, small, and agreeable. My voice rang out strong, steady, and powerful through the speakers, carrying every ounce of pain, clarity, love for my family, and hard-won strength I had discovered at those gates that morning. Today was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. But this morning, right outside the beautiful gates of this club, my parents, the two people who have loved me unconditionally, sacrificed everything they had, and supported me every single day of my life without ever asking for anything in return, were stopped and publicly humiliated. They were told to wait outside like they didn't belong here, like they were not good enough, not important enough to celebrate their only daughter's wedding day. The entire room went deathly, pin-drop silent. The air felt heavy. I continued, my voice gaining even more strength and conviction with every word I spoke. My father has worked as a mechanic for nearly 30 years, fixing cars so other families could keep moving forward with their lives, even when his own back screamed in pain every single night. My mother has spent her life noticing and caring for everyone around her, making sure no child in her school ever felt invisible, hungry, or unloved. They raised me in a home filled with love that didn't need iron gates, approval from society, or expensive veneers to be real. And today, on what should have been the most joyful day for all of us, they were made to feel small, unimportant, and out of place at their own daughter's wedding. I paused for a moment, letting the weight of my words settle over the stunned guests. Then I looked directly at Elaine, my gaze unflinching and clear. A wedding is not just about expensive flowers, designer dresses, perfect venues, or crystal chandeliers. It is about respect. Real, deep, honest respect for the people who shaped you. And I will not start a marriage in a family that cannot show even basic human respect to the parents who raised me with so much love and sacrifice. I will not bring children into a home where my parents are treated as second-class guests, forced to wait at the gate like outsiders. The silence in the ballroom was now suffocating. Several guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Elaine's perfect smile had frozen into something brittle, ugly, and strained. I slowly slipped the sparkling engagement ring off my finger and placed it gently on the table right in front of Daniel with a soft, final click that seemed to echo through the entire room like a period at the end of a long chapter. "I loved you, Daniel," I said quietly, just loud enough for him and the microphone to carry my words clearly. "But I love and respect my parents far more than I can express. I will not shrink myself or my family to fit into your world. I deserve better than this. They deserve so much better than this." Then I stepped down from the stage with steady steps, took my parents' hands firmly in mine, and we walked out of that grand ballroom together. Me, still in my full flowing white wedding gown, the long veil trailing behind me like a white banner of surrender I was finally proudly refusing to carry any longer. The room remained in stunned, heavy silence as my heels clicked across the polished marble floor. Behind me, I clearly heard Elaine's sharp, furious hiss cut through the quiet like a knife. "She is ruining everything we planned!" And Daniel's desperate, breaking voice calling my name over and over again. "Hannah! Hannah, wait!" I didn't turn around, not even once. I kept walking forward with my head held high, holding my parents' hands tightly, stepping into a future that finally felt like my own. That night, back in the safe, warm embrace of my parents' small, familiar house in Rockford, I sat at the old wooden kitchen table where I had done my homework for so many years, where Dad had patiently taught me how to change a flat tire by flashlight, and where Mom had made hot chocolate with extra marshmallows on every bad or heartbreaking day. The same table with the familiar chipped corner and faint old coffee stains that told stories of our real life. Dad didn't say much that night. He just sat across from me, his solid, unchanging presence like a rock-solid anchor in the middle of an emotional storm. Mom made tea with hands that still trembled slightly from the day's events, and she cried quiet, private tears, not for herself or the humiliation she had endured, but for the pain and betrayal she saw so clearly in her daughter's eyes. 3 weeks later, the nausea hit me hard, and without warning, like a sudden wave crashing over me, I took the pregnancy test alone in the same childhood bathroom where my father used to help me brush my teeth as a little girl. 2 bold, unmistakable pink lines stared back at me from the stick. I was pregnant with Daniel's child. Telling Daniel happened only through lawyers and formal channels. His responses swung wildly and dramatically between raw shock, angry demands, desperate emotional pleas to reconcile and fix things for the baby's sake, and cold, calculated threats about custody battles and what's best for the child's future opportunities. Elaine tried calling the house phone repeatedly for days, leaving long voicemail messages dripping with false sweetness and concern about the Whitaker bloodline, and how this innocent baby deserved the best opportunities, education, and life that only our family's resources and connections can provide. My father answered every single one of those calls the same way, calm, firm, and completely unmovable. "Talk to the lawyer. My daughter has nothing more to say to you." Then he would hang up the phone gently, like he was quietly closing a door on a chapter that no longer had any power over us. I set one unbreakable, non-negotiable boundary from the very first day. Any future relationship with my child would require genuine respect, kindness, and basic human decency toward my family. No exceptions, no negotiations, no refinements or conditions from their side. They refused to accept or honor that boundary. The fallout in their tight, elite social circle was quiet at first, but slowly became devastating and far-reaching. Whispers and stories about what happened at the wedding spread like wildfire through their country club circles and business networks. Some longtime business associates and partners began quietly distancing themselves from Whitaker Investments. Elaine was politely but firmly asked to step down from one of her most prominent charity boards after several major donors raised very uncomfortable public questions about family values and character. Daniel still gets supervised visitation with our son, Noah Marcus Cole, every other weekend, but only under the strict, clear rules and boundaries that I control completely. Elaine has never met her grandson, not once. She refuses to visit or participate on my terms or in my family's simple, loving environment. That is her choice, and after everything, I have finally made my peace with it. Today, my beautiful little boy Noah is 10 months old. He has inherited my father's stubborn, determined chin and my mother's soft, gentle, curious eyes. He laughs with the same bright, uninhibited, joyful sound that used to fill our little house when I was growing up. A laugh that needs no approval, no gates, and no permission to exist. Every single Sunday, we gather for dinner at that same modest, beloved house in Rockford. There are no iron gates to keep anyone out. No security guards checking names or status. No fake smiles or hidden judgments lurking beneath polite conversation. Just mismatched chairs gathered warmly around the old kitchen table, Mom's hearty, delicious meatloaf filling the entire house with its comforting aroma, Dad letting Noah bang happily and loudly on his old toolbox with safe plastic tools, and laughter that rises freely and warmly, laughter that doesn't need anyone's approval, wealth, or social standing to be real and beautiful. I don't regret walking away from that country club wedding. Not for one single second of any day since. I gained something far more precious, far more lasting, and far more valuable than any lavish ceremony, diamond ring, or high society approval could ever offer. I gained my own voice. I gained my dignity and self-worth back. I gained strong, healthy, unbreakable boundaries. And most importantly, I gained the deep, unshakable knowledge in my heart that I will never again allow anyone, no matter how powerful, wealthy, or polished they appear, to make my family or myself wait outside any gate like we don't belong. My name is Hannah Cole. I'm 30 years old now. I'm a proud single mother, raising my son with the same values I was given, a proud daughter of Marcus and Elena Cole, and a woman who finally learned, the hard way, that real respect is never negotiable, never optional, and never something you have to earn by becoming smaller than you are. If you've ever been made to feel like you or the people you love don't belong somewhere, if you've ever watched someone you love being quietly or openly humiliated while the world around you pretended nothing was wrong, type, "I won't wait at the gate" in the comments below. If this story touched something deep inside your heart, if it reminded you of your own worth or your own family's quiet strength, please share it with someone who needs to hear that they are enough exactly as they are, without shrinking, without apologizing, and without waiting for permission to stand tall. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for staying with me until the very end of this story. This was my story, raw, honest, and true.